Your worship, members of council, thank you. I'm going to begin the presentation and then turn the floor over to Alicia Bourbeau, who is the Director of Corporate Services, that will take you through the document that you have in front of you. Alicia will give you a brief history of what has transpired in the past and why the document was prepared the way it was. She'll give you an update on the financial recovery plan, confirm some of the items that we've taken in this document for to ensure that we're meeting the financial recovery plan, but want to make sure that council is still on track with that. We go through the capital budget that you have in front of you and any changes to that, as well as the actual operating budget, which again, that document is that you have in front of you. Set the next budget date where staff will give you a full presentation on the changes, again, that are meant in this document depending on the outcome of today's meeting. As well as that's the actual budget thing, and there are a couple of questions that came up that in the event that there are councillors that have pecuniary interests, council as a whole can have a general discussion on the entire budget, but when you get into specific, i.e. Office supplies, then certain councillors will have to declare pecuniary interests, and same with fire. So, and then those gentlemen will need to remove themselves from the meeting and from the room, and then council can have the discussion on those if they come up. They may not come up. So again, as long as you're having a general discussion, both individuals can participate.
Okay.
And the last thing is there are new electrical plugs underneath that you're able to plug your surfaces in.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Alicia?
Morning. Thank you for coming to the first of the 2022 budget meetings. Nikita will put a copy of the organizational chart just on the screen for a little bit of general reference. And I don't want to dwell too long in the past, but I thought it was important to take a few moments to guide this council through some of what we have gone through that has brought us to this point to date. So in August 2019, we went to council to advise them that the financial situation of the county was a bit precocious. We were very much at that time at the risk of running out of funds if we did not change our spending habits. It was not a new find. Anyone looking at the financial statements that are online or had been presented to council previously, you can see the measured decline in the cash balances every year at the end of the year. But bringing it to a head was the 2018 non-payment of a couple very large players of the non-residential tax income that the county generally sees. So when you immediately do not collect $5+ million of your revenue, it makes it a little hard to keep balancing things, which is what had been happening going on since about 2009. So in August 2019, we brought that to council's attention. They took a little bit of time to digest, and in September of 2019, within a couple weeks of the first meeting, council at the time directed administration to immediately go and reduce the operating budget by 15% and cause And that this immediate reduction caused a couple of capital projects that had not been started to cease and not be considered for that year. And we began immediately reaching the 15% reduction by kind of eliminating the capital that hadn't been started and looking at some of the underutilized lines and reducing the budgets in those areas allowed us to reach that mandate. In October 2019, administration and council made the decision to not look at any staffing positions or any further cuts in that until we received the results of the organizational review, which council had directed administration to undertake earlier in the summer of 2019. We received those results towards the end of October, early part of November, and based on the supporting documentation in that report, combined with some of our own discussions and looking at what we could do, we made changes to the organizational chart, which created some vacant positions to remove them for the chart or to continue not filling them. For example, planning went from 2 development officers down to 1 development officer. That was at that time that the decision to contract out the patrol services contract rather than having our own in-house enforcement was done. That in itself saved us quite significant budget because again, we're now utilizing a lesser number of hours for enforcement than we had when we had our in-house. Those changes made, layoff packages were done. We did some internal movements within staff and ended 2019 with a new look on the organizational chart, a new number of FTEs, and looking forward to the next year. Also in December 2019, we passed the interim budget for 2020. We were in a position where we were able to complete the full budget. There was too many discussions still going on as far as movement of positions and where we could look to cut money, so we simply passed an interim budget. But we did pass the operating and capital budget in February of 2020, and it remained or maintained the 15% decrease in operating costs that had been directed to us by council earlier in the year. And we capped capital at $3 million. So those were the two significant.
Sorry, I just.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought there was a question. And then in March, April 2020, everybody became impacted from some world health issues going on, and we were once again tasked with looking at reducing where we could. Of course, operations were not as they were able to be. There was many people deployed to work from home. We were doing what we could to support the province in their efforts to combat COVID-19. There was a number of temporary layoffs for several staff. Those layoffs spanned from May 1st, and the last one returned to the organization September 2020, so there was some significant time off. There was also remaining staff who did not have a layoff. Everyone was asked to reduce their hours with the exception of the management team. So those decreases ranged from 9% to 12% reductions in payroll costs, and that lasted for a period of 10 weeks. The senior management team were not provided the opportunity to reduce their hours in exchange for reduced payroll. We were maintaining our regular hours, but it still took a 10% decrease to our wages, and we matched the staff reduction for the 10 weeks as well. In December 2020, the 2021 operating budget was passed. And according to the recovery plan, the 5-year financial recovery plan adopted by council, year 1 was to be 0% increase plus a 3% increase in taxes. Year 2 was a 0% increase in the operating, plus a 3% increase in taxes. The thought behind that is those 2 years would provide administration an opportunity to identify any underutilized lines in the operating budget and move those funds accordingly to support and sustain operations. I believe there was some reduction to level of service with the amount of time for grader beats and the opportunity to be going up and down the roads. That I will leave for Andre to expand on if there's any questions on that. So our 2021 operating budget was passed in December. There was a 0% increase to expenses, so again, we're still operating on the 15% reduction numbers that we had gone to in the summer of 2019. And 3%, estimated 3% increase to taxation, as well as the cap on capital to $3 million. Which brings us today, so we are now in year 3 of our 5-year operating plan. So according to the plan, we are to cap the operating expenditures at no more than a 1% increase. We'd still be looking at potentially a 3% increase to taxation. And again, working to capping capital at the $3 million. And that would bring us to, I believe, our discussions today on the capital budget, unless there's questions from anyone.
Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to Alicia, just to clarify, we're going into the 3rd year of the 5-year plan.
Correct.
Okay. And sorry, second part to that question. All 5 years, there's a proposed 3% increase to taxation.
Correct. The original, sorry, through the Chair to Council Dean, through the 5-year recovery plan that was originally adopted by Council in October 2019, allowed for a 3% tax increase in each of the 5 years.
So it allowed for, it wasn't, so that can be changed if Council so decides.
Yes, again, in through the Chair to Council Dean, to expand on that, we can budget at the 3% increase now when we receive our assessment data and do the analysis and start to calculate the tax rates for 2022. The operating budget can be brought back at the same time for any adjustments by Council if the desire is not to have the recovery plan stay forward as previously adopted.
Or conversely, if the assessment was down, we could decide to raise. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Okay.
So in the workbook that was all provided to everyone, on the very first page is the capital projects identified for 2022. There is 3 columns on it. The first one is a carry forward, so these funds will be added to the 2022 operating budget from 2021. So we will identify these 3 as carry forwards. The middle column is the items up for discussion today. And the final column is another project identified, which would be potentially, if council chose to move forward on it, then it would be at a debenture. And I do have, when we're discussing that, some information on debenture costs and the servicing of any future debt on that. Andre also, just prior to the meeting, passed out some notes, and I will at this point invite him to go through and discuss the capital budget with all of you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilors. As Alicia mentioned, I passed out a document basically identifying all the capital items for infrastructure that have been put forward. So first one is a culvert replacement on Range Road 64. 1.6 kilometers north of Horse Creek Road. This culvert has experienced some failures in the past. In 2020, the downstream portion basically came loose, washed out. Temporary repair was done. A number of years ago, struts were installed inside the culvert to extend the life. But when a subsequent inspection was done in 2021, it was found that the culvert itself is experiencing cracking where the bolt holes are. And the other issue, when you put struts in a culvert, they're basically garbage collectors. So all the brush, logs, beavers, everything goes down, collects in there. We spend roughly 2 full days a year cleaning out the drift that goes in there. Otherwise, that culvert will block 100%. We applied for a grant for that culvert replacement. We were successful at 75%. The total replacement cost is estimated at $450,000. The county portion would be $112,500. Does council wish to ask questions on each separate item, or just one after I go through them?
Council?
I think each separate item.
Yeah. We'll go item by item then,
Okay.
Andre. So
Any
anything on
questions
this
or
one?
clarification?
Okay, I'm going to start with Councillor Prestige and then I'll get to Councillor Williams.
Who is this grant coming from? Is that provincial or federal?
Provincial.
Provincial.
Go ahead.
My question was does the grant have a expiry date? Like, do we have to use it by a certain date, or is it open-ended?
Through the Chair, Councilor Williams, the end of 2023.
Okay.
Sorry, 2022.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, 22.
Yes.
Okay.
Next item is a Trident belly dump. Due to budget restrictions for the last number of years, Woodlands County has rarely hired any contract trucks to haul gravel. We, for the last 2 years, rented a Trident belly dump, roughly for $10,000 to $12,000 a year. We use the belly dump to spread gravel under power lines mainly, but it is used for general graveling also. The Trident hauls more gravel than the Tandem, so it does get utilized quite a bit when we are renting it. We've estimated our cost to run the Trident trailer ourselves at roughly $550 a day. When we hire out, it's $112.82 an hour, 10 hours, costing $1,228 plus taxes. We feel that we can get a used Trident belly dump for roughly $40,000 at the auction, and the lifespan would be 10 to 14 years. Questions?
Any questions? Next item.
Okay, next item, contribution to the airport reserve. In the near future, 1 to 3 years, the airport's going to need some substantial upgrades. Runway resurfacing for approximately $2.5 million, and that we're looking in 3 to 4 year mark. Taxiway reconstruction, roughly 2 years, and taxiway lighting and signage, also 2 years. The proposal is that we put $100,000 into the airport reserve. We are going to do some engineering in 2022 for the runway reconfiguration for lighting, signage, and the reconstruction. So that project will be ready to go in 2023.
Councillor Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. To Andre, this explanation talks about in the near future, 1 to 3 years, these upgrades are necessary. What's the life of the runway resurfacing? And the reason I ask is, I believe that runway was resurfaced about 10 years ago.
I believe it was resurfaced in 2011, 2012, something like that,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so is that typical, a 10 to 15-year life for?
From what I've gathered for a runway, yes,
Okay,
15 years ballpark.
okay. And then the second question was, this, this overall cost, when it comes, is, 3.3 million-ish that you have there. We're putting $100,000, or we're being asked to put $100,000 away. What percentage of that 3.3 do you expect to receive in grant funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, our airport doesn't qualify for a lot of grants because of its size. So at this time, I don't see any grants being available, but that doesn't mean in the future the province or the feds won't announce that there are grants for airports our size. But right now, I can't tell you because there's nothing there.
Wow. And so this $100,000 would be largely just engineering costs?
No, we will be doing the engineering costs through our operating.
And just, I guess, it seems like a small amount. If this is a cost that we know is coming, I don't know whether we can afford it, we're gonna have to decide that, but it just seems like a very small percentage of the overall cost.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I just wanted to ask, have we been, I didn't see it anywhere, but the airport reserve, have we already been putting money into it the last few years? Or is there anything in the reserve thus far?
Through the chair, Councillor Williams, I believe a few weeks ago, Alicia did identify that some funds were going to the airport reserve. I should also mention that the 100,000 will be, if we put 100,000 for the next few years, that will essentially pay for the taxiway lighting and signage. When it comes to the resurfacing of the runway, that will likely be a debentured item.
Okay.
And this is part of the frustrating part of the timing that the election occurs, is that almost the first thing on your table is an work meeting and then a budget, where you haven't seen any of this strategic plans around the individual things, any of the operating plans yet. We haven't had time to go through a lot of it, so I think a lot of this will start making more sense when you see some of the updated planning.
Good.
Any other questions on this one?
I should also point out that some of these items have gone to the Airport Advisory Committee over the last few months.
Go ahead, Andre.
Item 4, west of Blue Ridge, there's approximately 650 meters of road that has never been paved. The pavement goes from Coal Mine Hill to the 650 meters away from Blue Ridge, and then it's paved just to the boundary of Blue Ridge, so there's that 650 meters. It causes issues every year. There's a constant heaving. There's been some work done. We did some work last year to rectify some of the issues, but for the last 25, 30 years, this section has never been dealt with. So the proposal is that 2 culverts get replaced. They are a 900 millimeter and a 1.5 meter culvert. We have applied for a grant for the one culvert of roughly $348,000, which is a 75% funding. It's the same grant application that we received for Range Road 64 north of Forest Creek Road. So we're somewhat confident we'll get funding for this. So the project would be replacing the two culverts, doing some work to mitigate the groundwater and to rebuild that 650 meters and pave it. And that would resolve that long-standing issue just outside Blue Ridge. The cost for that is estimated at $800,000. You can see the one culvert, the inlet has raised and separated, so that water is traveling in and out of the remaining section of the culvert. Questions?
Councillor Preston?
Yeah, this road is just call it the headache. I've been here 20 years, over 20 years, and every year it's the same thing. This year, we had ruts in the road a foot deep. We fix it and do the cold mix again, and the next spring it's gone again. This is the priority road in the Blue Ridge area that I get requests to fix.
Any other questions? Councillor Dean?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, to Andre. So I'm not understanding how the costs are that are listed in the budget. By item number 4 is $450,000, and the cost of the county is about $87,000. But on the next page with the picture of the culvert, the failed culvert, it says capital budget implication of $800,000.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, that's a good question. So the cost of the road construction is $450,000. The cost of the culvert is $348,000. So you put those numbers together, it gives you the $800,000
Less the 348 in grant,
if we get the grant.
if we get the grant. Confident about that?
50-50?
Depends.
And that's a valid question. I think people have to realize that, you know, the grant application, you can apply for them, but you may not get for them, so you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Councillor Lucan?
Yeah, through the chair to Andre, you don't start any of these projects until you have the grants for them. Is that kind of the process, or?
Through the chair to Councillor Cook, if council approves the budget in this project, we essentially start doing all the engineering work, all the design, and put it out for tender. If the grant comes in, then the county's portion is less. If it doesn't come in, then it is the numbers that the tenders come in at.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilhelm?
So this road is cold mix, or it's like a fully paved road? Like I'm pretty sure know which one it is.
Through the chair to Councillor Willem, this road is paved from Blue Ridge to the top of Coal Mine Hill,
Right.
except this 650 meters.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think I know which section to skip.
So maybe I'm just gonna ask this question and kind of get back into our asset management and the end of things that council's really been coming from this position at is value for dollar spent. If we keep repairing this at the rate we've been repairing it versus doing a solid fix like this, what's our time for recovery on the repair?
Mr. Mayor, Council, that's a good thing, asset management that you brought up. Our asset management program is just starting, so there's really not a lot to present to council as far as asset management goes, but this site did make the #1 as far as our asphalt roads go, because it's not asphalt where the rest of everything else is asphalt. So I believe in 2021 we spent, I'm going to say around $50,000 doing repairs. We spend, as Councillor Prestidge identified, we're there every year doing work. So if the project comes in at $800,000, The life, those culverts will last 40-plus years. Once replaced, the base of the road should last 40 years plus. The asphalt, lifespan of asphalt roads is ballpark 20, 25 years.
Counselor Dean?
So, through the chair to Andre again, if I understood Alicia properly, capital is capped at 3 million, but this year we can add 1%. Is that right?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, the 1% is only on the operating budget.
On the operating budget?
So the recovery plan reads that we are to prepare budgets with the $3 million cap on capital, and only if directed by council are we to go over the $3 million.
Okay, so I just, where I'm going with this is the summary in column number 2 on the project list. The total is 4.455 million, and then we have some numbers that bring it down to 2.78. So what are we working with, Andre, here? Are you asking for 4.455, or are you asking for 2.781?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean. The current capital project list before council today for 2022, in the center column, totals 4.45. We're identifying that potentially there is room for a $300,000 grant to come through, which would reduce that, should that be the project you choose. We also know that there's $589,000 has been estimated to be our allocation from the province for MSI funds. So it is the choice of council if the capital projects are awarded still at the, we're raising through taxation $3 million for the capital, or if you want the capital to be reduced by the 5.98, therefore not having the same tax increase required. We're also identifying on the line of $725,000 from the equipment reserve, because we have put money into the fund. So, and the total at 2.78, that's a subtotal for you. So it's, we are here before you today to go over all of this and to come up with a capital project plan that council is comfortable with, and it's their determination if the MSI reduces the amount that we're raising for capital through taxation, or if it's in addition to it. It's completely dependent on the projects that council chooses.
Okay, thanks very much.
Anything else? Okay.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Counselor Prestich.
this culvert, the way it's split open, I feel it could fail at any time. And then we'd be stuck doing it with no funding. So I think it's best to put the money in the budget to do it before it does fail.
Well, just for process sake, let's go through, ask as many questions as we can on the individual projects themselves. And then at the end, once we're totaling everything up, we'll have a discussion on our priorities as to what exactly is going to be in and going to be out. And again, I guess just the process, I think that'll be the easiest thing. Okay, go ahead, Andre, please.
Next item, number 5 is CN gravel pit crushing. Woodlands County operates 2 active gravel pits. We crush in each pit every 3 years. This year, being 2022, we are required to crush in the CN pit, which is adjacent to the Whitecourt boundary between the Highway 32 and the Athabasca River. So we crush roughly $750,000 worth. That provides enough gravel for 3 years. Gives us our winter material, gives us our crushed gravel for road surfaces, and gives us coarse gravel for soft spot reconstruction, or if we do any base work, we use the larger aggregate. So in 2022, We will put a tender out. Actually, the tender is gonna be going out in the next couple of weeks for crushing in the CN pit. When the numbers come in, that will come back to council for award.
I just have one quick question. Once that material's crushed, does it stay there at the pit, or do you truck it all out and store it at another location, or how does that go exactly? 'Cause I
Your
know-
worship, the bulk of it stays in the CN pit. However, we do haul, we hire contract trucks and we haul 3/4 inch gravel to the Anselmo pit. We stockpile there. And then from there, we utilize our own trucks to re-gravel in the Anselmo area.
The only reason I'm asking is I understand there's road banning in that area, and at some times that we need to, so are we getting around that process? I shouldn't say get around it, but are we going to stockpile so we're outside the road ban so we don't get affected by them, or?
We
how does
plan
that
our
work?
operations with the bans in consideration.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else? Next item.
Next item, Trident plow truck with sander and pup trailer. We have a fleet of 6 plow trucks ranging in age from 9 years to 3 years old. We have 2 units that are 7 years old. They are basically lemons. Those 2 trucks are down roughly 40% more than all the other trucks. We've replaced electronics, we replaced turbos, we replaced computers. We basically bank on one of those trucks being down almost all the time. We have one truck that's dedicated to Lakecor for the subcontract on 658, 661. And typical replacement schedule for tandem trucks is 10 years. We have a delivery time of 8 to 12 months to get plow trucks delivered to our yard. The last one we got took actually 14 months from order to delivery. So we are budgeting $475,000 to purchase a new unit. Once we do get a new unit, we will dispose of one of the existing units.
Councilor Prestige?
Why are we replacing the sander and the pup trailer? If it's just the truck that's causing the problem.
Through the chair, Council Prestige, we are short one pup truck or one pup trailer. So we have just a body job that's hauling, so that would complement our fleet. The new units come with built-in sanders, so they're U-boxes. Everything's built into that. You slide a plate in and out of the box, whether you're using your sander or not. And going with the Tridem, we can haul more material, especially if we are doing 658, 661. We don't have to go back to the yard as often to pick up the material.
Sir Williams?
Through the chair to Andre, 2 parts maybe to this question, but the first one, would this be the truck that would be dedicated to Ledcor? And the second part of it is, does that reflect the rates just because of the benefit to having a Tridem versus a tandem? Is there a rate increase that would be?
Through the chair, Councilor Williams, not necessarily dedicated to the Lakeport project, but it'll be based in the fort, so it may or may not be used on that. And if it did work on the Lakeport contract, the rates would change for that truck.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilor Prestige?
Are we auctioning off the truck that we're replacing?
Through the chair, Councilor Prestige, when we get the new unit in, we would bring that, an RFP back to council, have council declare that unit as surplus. And at that time, council would be given options on how to dispose of that truck. But we would not be keeping it.
Counselor Christie?
To the chair, Andre, again. Which truck is this that we're replacing?
Through the chair, Council Prestige, it will be either unit 418 or 419. They are internationals, and as I mentioned, they're 7 years old right now.
Where I have a problem with replacing plow trucks, this is, if it's a lemon, is we're graveling our own roads with our plow trucks. They're heavy. We don't pack the weight that we should be. And we're wearing out our plow trucks. And they should be utilized for plowing roads, not graveling our county roads. I just have a hard time with replacing these trucks.
Through the chair to Council Prestige, when winter season's over, we strip down as much as we can off those trucks to increase our hauling capacity. The last, let's say the last 3 years, we have not had the budget to hire contract trucks to do our re-graveling. Yes, the trucks may be out there hauling gravel, but every other municipality utilizes the trucks in the same way. Haul gravel in the summer, plow in the winter.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next item.
Next item, pickup trucks. Our fleet consists of a number of light-duty trucks. Replacement is typically 7 to 10 years. Currently, we have 10 units that are 8 years older, 8 years or older. They're running all roughly 200,000 kilometers. A lot of these are half-ton trucks, and what we're finding is they are too light for the work we're doing. So this item is replacing 5 of them for 3/4 tons at $250,000. The ones that are being replaced, we'll try to repurpose them. If not, that will come back to council also to have them declared surplus and disposed of.
Okay, any questions? Counselor Kush, go ahead.
Through the chair, Andre, just out of curiosity, we're getting 5 trucks for the price. Is that like a group or like I guess, bulk fleet discount, whatever we're getting on the pricing? Or is it just, like if we choose not to go for all 5 trucks, will that affect kind of what we're paying per truck?
Through the chair to Councilor Kush, we get municipal discounts. So whether we buy 4, 5, or 8, it doesn't make a big difference. We get a set discount on per unit, put it that way.
Yeah, we're
Mr.
assuming,
Frank.
I can supplement, they come from the factory direct. Yeah. So we get them from the manufacturer, we just go through a dealer that gets minimum handling fees for it.
Counselor Prestige.
Have you researched into when you can get a truck? Like it could be a year and a half, 2 years to get it. or
Through
a
the
truck.
chair to Councilor Prestige, we have, we're being told could be anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 months, all depending. Things are starting to loosen up a little bit, but yeah, we're being told there's going to be a considerable amount of time before we get the units.
Counselor Kush.
To the chair, also just, if we decide not to do vehicle replacement this time and push it off for next year, is that going to kind of impact what we're doing right now? Like, are these vehicles constantly in the shop, or are they still relatively reliable trucks?
Through the chair, Councilor Kush, they're, most of these trucks are holding in there. They are getting older, so we're having to do a few more repairs. Can be pushed off. Anything can be pushed off, it just might cost us a bit of money to keep them going.
Counselor Dean.
Through the chair to Andre, And I guess just kind of the second half of that question, we have being proposed to replace half of the half-ton fleet or half of these 10 vehicles. Would you suggest that next year or the year after you'd be looking at replacing the remaining?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, the 2023 budget will likely show the replacement of more vehicles, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Do we ever get to a point on this where, I mean, I don't know, if we've got 10 trucks and we're replacing half of them this year and half of them next year, can we not get this split up a little bit so we're replacing 2 and then 2 and then 2 and we just keep rolling along? Do we have to, like, it seems like we're replacing a lot of equipment at once. So I'm wondering if it might be easier from a budget perspective, rather than putting these large capital costs in, can we somehow split that replacement schedule up, or is it beneficial to buy in bulk?
Your worship, members of council, I just want to clarify, we have more than 10 pickup trucks. But we have a bulk of them that are getting up in age. So ideally, yes, you split the purchases out so that you're not doing these big purchases, but keep in mind, for the last 3 years, we have not purchased anything because of our finances. So those trucks, you know, they just keep getting older. So at some point, you have to do catch up, and we are kind of getting to that point.
All right, Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to Andre, like, are these trucks rusting out, or like, are they getting mild out, or what is the main other?
Through
10
through the
years?
chair to Council Prestige, as I mentioned, they're roughly 8 years old, and they're end of 2020, they were ballpark 200,000 K. So we take the mileage on the trucks at the end of every year. So at the end of this year, they'll probably be, I'll guess, around 220 kilometers.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Chair to Andre, 10 years is actually a good amount of time for a fleet truck to last. If we upgrade to these 3/4 tons, are we gonna get increased service time out of them, decreased maintenance costs? Like what, with regards to how are they undersized? Like what are we doing with them that we need a 3/4 ton?
Through the chair, Councilor Williams. So we're upgrading to 3/4 tons because we pull a lot of trailers and we carry a lot of items. So the half tons, we're doing a lot of suspension work because they're just not heavy enough for our needs.
So follow up, sorry. Would it be better for us then to look at having a portion of the fleet be 3/4 ton and a portion be half ton to save costs moving forward? Or do you just want all of them to be 3/4 tons?
Through the chair, Councilor Williams, what we're proposing is that we go to all 3/4 tons. That way we can rotate them throughout the fleet. So if we have some users that are putting high mileage on, we can take those, move them to another department, and then give them the lower mileage ones. So it'll give us more flexibility as far as evening everything out as far as the trucks themselves. So, for instance, the foreman or the managers that do drive trucks would run the newer trucks for probably the first couple of years. Then they would go down into the fleet so that your high mileage users keep getting newer trucks and then they go down to other areas.
Is there a huge cost difference between the half ton and 3/4? Because I mean, if you 250 divided by 5 at 50K for a 3/4 ton truck, that's a pretty good deal. Are we saving any significant amount of money to go to a half ton? Like, is there a huge cost difference?
I don't think there's a big cost difference. Well, I don't think the cost difference makes up for the wear and tear on half tons compared to the 3/4 tons.
Okay. You.
Okay, anything else? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, next item, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, going back to the, where I talked about putting money into the airport reserve. As I was talking about that, in my mind, I couldn't remember if I put this in as capital or not. I did mention we do the engineering under, through the operating budget, but I do have the engineering here under the capital budget. So, in 2021, council passed a bylaw, had 2 readings to close 3 roadways that are actually airside. So those roadways were closed. The 3rd reading will be coming at the next council meeting to formally close them. At that point, those parcels are going to be redesignated, so they will require signage and lighting. This engineering is to do all the groundwork, the design, so that we meet TP 312, which is the aerodrome standard and recommended practices. And then in 2023, we would have a proposal that the lighting and the signage for those 3 parcels is completed. So this will do the engineering for that, and also the engineering for a portion of the taxiway that, right now it's designated an apron, but we will be bringing forward to redesignate a certain apron 3 into taxiway. So this will allow for the engineer work to be done on that one also, as far as resurfacing. And that is estimated at $50,000. Questions?
Counselor Dean?
Through the chair to Andre, so this item, is it related in any way to the previous item that had taxiway lighting and taxiway reconstruction?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, yes.
Okay.
This is the engineer work to do
Okay.
those items.
So, just for clarification for myself, are you talking, because that there's practically a mile of it that's designated as apron 3, so what exactly are we talking about here as getting designated as taxiway? Are you talking about the 3 closed roadways? Because I thought those were going private taxiway.
So, Your Worship, members of council, so apron 3 will be redesignated as a taxiway. The 3 parcels that we are closing will be redesignated as taxiways. I believe 1 will be designated as a private taxiway. The other 2 will be regular taxiways. So we will have to provide lighting and signage on those 3 that are regular taxiways, which includes
Right.
apron 3.
Yep. Okay. That's what I wanted. Clarification. Thank you. Anyone else? Next item.
Your Worship, if I may, before Andre speaks in regards to the right-of-way acquisition, if council wants the details in regards to this item, we would go into closed session and we would provide that information.
The right-of-way on the, so on the next item, you mean?
Yeah, next item.
Item number 9 is right-of-way acquisition. So within the county, there's several locations that require roadways to be realigned due to different factors. We have one that we have undertaken discussions, surveying, appraisals on property that we feel needs to be acquired sooner than later. That number we've estimated at $30,000. If, I should point out, all dealings with land acquisition are dealt with in closed session as CEO Frank identified.
Okay, and the FOIP requirement under that would be what, 20?
Do you want to go into the closed session?
I'm betting council does, I see a lot of nodding heads, so I'm betting council does quickly.
Closed session, point, yeah, what's mine?
We just need the FOIP reference to include in the motion so that we get it correct, that's all. 24? Hey, look at that. So if somebody would like to make a motion to go into closed session just to discuss this under FOIP 24, Councilor Kush,
Make that motion to go into closed session. Under the right-of-way acquisition,
FOIP 24,
FOIP 24.
okay. That'll be reflected on the record. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. None opposed? Guess all in favor, that's carried, so we're in closed. Yeah, so it's just on that several right-of-way acquisitions.
We're good?
So we're not streaming.
We're good? Okay. So we're back from a closed session discussion. We just have a motion coming out of that. So Councilor Dean, just on the multiple right-of-way locations.
I prefer not to make a motion.
Your worship, members of council, just so that you go through your list and then have a discussion about the priorities on that list, right? Versus individual acceptance of each item.
Okay, but we're just coming out of closed session on this one item, so
Right.
we need a motion just to adopt the discussion on closed session on
You
this
just
item.
came out of closed, there's no decision required from closed session.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Andre.
Worship members of council, item number 9 is a briar patch asbestos abatement. So the briar patch in Blue Ridge is an old school that the county acquired a few years ago. There was an environmental abatement study completed, determined there was asbestos, lead, mercury, and since then there's mold in the building itself. As the county auditor mentioned in council orientation 2023, there's going to be new requirements for known structures or structures that are known to have asbestos in it. It's going to require further studies and a plan on how to deal with those locations. We have an estimate on doing the abatement in that building of $300,000. So this will deal with removing all the environmentally hazardous materials in that building. Has nothing to do with the demolition of the building itself, but the demolition will be brought forward in the 2023 capital budget.
Any questions on this one? Councilor Cooper?
Has there been, through to Andre, has there been any funds allocated to this yet?
Through Chair to Councilor Kulkan, not that I'm aware of.
Your worship, through to Councilor Copeland, at one point in time, council did allocate $100,000 towards the project, but it was placed in capital and then removed from capital, so. There
So-
was supposed to be a 3-year plan to do $100,000 for each year. But
Okay.
when we went, it was stopped or
As a
removed.
Yeah, as in 2017, we originally allocated, we were going to do, say, 100,000 per year in the budget, and we had allocated 100,000, but when the uncollected taxes thing hit, we
Okay.
kind of swept some of that up. So, out of curiosity, does this qualify as a brownfield in any of the granting that's out there for brownfield development with the asbestos?
I don't believe it does. We'll do some research on that, but I don't think it does.
Okay. Councillor Prestich?
Yes, this building's becoming a hazard. We have numerous break-ins with kids going into it. So it's a safety issue too, especially with the asbestos and mold and everything. So the sooner we can get this thing looked after, the less liability we have on the county.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Jared, Mr. Vashon, so 300,000 is just simply for the asbestos abatement completely? That doesn't include the demolition, as you said, will be happening in 2023?
Through the chair, Councilor Wilhelm, that's correct.
Okay.
Not just asbestos, but lead and mercury
Right.
also.
So is it possible to essentially package the demolition and abatement together? Is that possible, or do we have to look at these as two separate budget items?
Through the chair, Councilor Wilhelm, it can be packaged, well, they're essentially two separate types of contractors.
Okay.
It can be packaged together, but I believe the last estimate we had on demolition, I think was about $100 and some thousand. So that would be on top of this number.
Anything else, Councillor Kluge?
And through to Andre, is there a deadline, is there a time frame when this abatement has to be done? Was there a set time frame?
Through the chair, Councilor Kulkin, as the auditor mentioned, 2023, that's when the new guidelines come into place, or the new requirements.
Okay.
So dealing with it 2022 means we won't have to go down that road the following year.
Oh, Councillor Dean?
To the chair, I heard at the convention this past week, that term brownfield referenced a couple times. One I think was in the resolution even. Can we just get a quick Coles Notes overview of what it is and why this would not qualify for it?
Who would be best suited to give guidance on brownfields, or go ahead, Andre, if you want to tackle that one.
I was simply going to say we can do that, and we'll bring the information back at a future meeting.
Yeah, I think we should really look at that as a brownfield option, and if there is any remediation help in granting coming out of that, because I know asbestos in the buildings is huge, but I don't know if that makes it a brownfield. Typically, brownfields are contaminated soil and things like that, old gas stations, post-dipping, that kind of thing. Andre?
There were grants for asbestos for rural, I think, going back about 4 years ago. And asbestos removal grants kind of dried up right around that time, but we'll follow up.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Next item.
Next item is water distribution upgrade engineering. So the industrial subdivision and the airport were serviced with water, I believe in 2014. Recently, I'll say 3 years ago, we conducted some testing on the flows. It was identified that hydrants in some of those areas are lacking in the proper amount of flow. So we are budgeting $50,000 to conduct the engineering to determine the best option to resolve those issues and to get the engineering work in place and the design so that if there are grants for shovel-ready projects, that this project can be ready to go and submitted for a grant application.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Andres. So am I hearing that right, that the proper flow required for normal fire suppression is not adequate?
It can be improved upon, yes.
Yeah, that didn't really answer my question.
That's right.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay, next item.
Next item is the Blue Ridge Water Treatment Plant PLC. The Blue Ridge Water Plant had an upgrade, I think in 2015. However, the PLC that's in that plant is not original, but fairly close to it. So this spring, we had issues with the plant where it lost all the water. It was a PLC issue. It was solved. But there's been upgrades, as I mentioned, 2015 to the plant. We have digital pumps that are capable of doing more than what they're doing, but our PLC is lacking. And we have 3 wells that we draw from, but our PLC cannot differentiate the treatment requirements for each well because they all have different water qualities. So we have to manually make changes to our dosing system to produce the best water we can. Also, the current PLC, we cannot work on or operate the plant via the online. It doesn't have that capability, so we're budgeting or proposing $75,000 to improve the PLC in that water treatment plant.
Any questions? Next item.
Last one I have, item number 12, and I'll just point out, if you look at the package that was handed out, the ringed package, item number 12 is not on this list. It was added after. And the reason I added it, because there was still money left over out of that $3 million, and infrastructure wants it all. So, item number 12, no, actually, I forgot to put this item 12 forward when we were doing the list. So.
That's right with the first comment.
But when I saw, oh, there's money left, I thought, oh, perfect. So, Range Road 101, 150 meters north of Township Road 572 in Anselmo. This creek runs parallel to Range Road 101. Over the last number of years, due to increased flows, that creek has migrated towards the road. In 2020 and 2021, the bank eroded to the point where it was taking some of the side slope. We were able to put some large riprap on the side slope prior to it fully going into the creek. Once you're in the creek, you need a bunch of permits, stuff like that. So right now it is secure, but who knows what's going to happen in the next spring or subsequent springs. 2021, we did the preliminary work such as the fish habitat evaluation, the assessment. We filed the applications with DFO, talked to the property owners. We have the realignment design completed. Work in stream beds or waterways cannot take place between April and September of the year. So we've budgeted $185,000 to realign that creek back to where it originally was. There'll be some armoring done on the banks to ensure it stays in location. Property owner is amicable to the work being done. And that's it for this project. Any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead, Councilor.
I don't have any particular questions on this project, but there's one thing that I've been thinking about, and this is just for ourselves to make a little bit more sense of the budget. And there's two items included in this capital project, which takes us down the same road. And is it possible for you to pull the information of the costs of our fleet of gravel trucks that we have, the labor that's attached to the fuel and insurance, so that we can better understand going down the road how that would compare with doing contract work? Because at the moment you said that we haven't done any contract work because we didn't have any money for it, but I think it serves a purpose for us to understand a little better the entire costs that are attached to that fleet, so that we can make a comparison as to what a contractor would be able to do and what we can do in-house. So my question would be, can you pull those numbers so that we have a better understanding of that, of how that works?
Through the Chair, Councilor Cook, and are you looking at the entire fleet or different aspects of it?
Well, I think if we know what costs are attached to snow plowing, what costs are attached to patchwork, and then what costs are attached to the graveling program, it gives us a better idea of the services that possibly would be more competitive contracting, and how we would then begin to purchase these items, so we better identify the uses that we use them for and what we would use contracting for, because my understanding is right now this is done in-house. And so we really don't have any ability to compare those numbers and figure out maybe that we as council have to change some of the policies to give you guys better tools to use to start to use contractors or use things in-house.
Do you have a timeline?
No, I think this would be just to give us a better understanding down the road. I don't think that we can do this possibly for you can't do this for this budget, but it gives us a better understanding moving forward how we would be purchasing things and how do we change things so that we do use some contracted services and some not. If we don't have those numbers, we'll continue, buying equipment based on the current way that we do business. And I'm thinking that, for me to understand efficiencies a little better, I need to understand all of the costs that are attached to the capital items that we're running, the rolling items that we're running right now.
So if I can I clarify that maybe just a little bit?
Sure.
Because I think he's asking for specific information around more of a strategic question that would be for council, which would be, how do we measure value for dollar? How do we make sure that we, contract versus in-house? Is our fleet doing the job that it needs to do, this kind of thing? And as he said, this isn't something that we can consider in this particular budget, but this is something that would be a strategic change, maybe moving down the way that council wants to consider. So I know that sometimes we throw too much on the plate in a short period of time. I don't think that's the intention at all. This would be a long-term type of planning idea from what I understand from council, unless I got that incorrect. If I spoke out of turn, please let me know.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to Andre. If you figured it out by the ton mile to place the gravel on the road, you hire a contractor that has Tridem truck, Tridem trailer, and they're hauling a lot more product on the same run as we are with a tandem truck, with a tandem trailer. They're burning almost the same amount of fuel as we are, and we're hauling a lot less. So you take the cost of the contractor doing it by the ton mile and what your trucks are costing you by the ton mile. And you gotta take in replacement cost and all that, cause like we're gonna mile our gravel, or our plow trucks out hauling gravel. So our replacement cost is gonna increase because we're gonna be doing them more often. So you gotta take that into consideration too, on the total cost of hauling the gravel. So, yeah, we're saving some money right now using our own trucks, but in the long run, it could cost us a lot more because we're gonna be replacing our trucks more often.
Your worship, members of council, and I understand the question, right, is an in-depth comparison would take some time. However, again, the overall arching view, provide in-house service versus contracted services is also a strategic discussion that you should have with, are there other services that you can apply that to as well,
Yeah.
right? And I think this, for your strategic planning session on the 5th, is that's part of this discussion, right? And it can be provided. It's not like, it's just a question of how in-depth do you want to go?
Yeah. Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So, question, I guess, about process. So this is our last capital budget item. Are we now gonna go through and prioritize and chop and cut, or what's the next step here?
I think the next is to go through the operational portion of it, but, Andre, what did you have?
I just want to identify that I do have one more item. That is not part of this, but there is one more item.
He always has one more. right?
There's always one more.
Oh,
Who's the cap on that?
Alicia?
Through the members of council, there is still 4 additional, there's 6 lines, 4 of them are money lines on the, that pertain to the fire department and some of the equipment. I did not have conversations with our protective services manager prior to this meeting, and he is unavailable today, so I'll be deferring to Mr. Frank to help me go through the final few lines on the capital. And then I believe there was the conversation on Horse Creek Road, which is also, so I'm not sure if we've gone too long and people are looking for a break, or
Was that your question, or you just wanted to get an overview of the process for?
Yeah, what my question was once we've gone through this entire list, including everything that Ms. Orbo has indicated, are we then tasked with, at this meeting, to start to prioritize?
We could, but on the capital side, yes, we could.
So it's not, that's not necessarily the process, but we could defer to another meeting?
You can defer to another meeting to get a little more information and try and figure out the operating side as well. I'd like to go through the entire budget, so that we get an idea of the entire thing. Also, there's ways you can move on from one side to the other. You might see a capital item you want and something operationally on the service levels that we lower or raise that might change the way the budgeting looks. So I'd prefer to go through this for myself as an overview of everything, and then we'll run through it and start prioritizing from there.
Fair enough. Okay.
Does that work for administration? Okay. Okay, did I miss any questions, or we're good? Okay, I'm gonna let Andre continue with his presentation.
One more item that.
The
you
one
have.
more item that's in
Well-
4.
It was simply Horse Creek Road. It's on the list for $2.2 million.
What was
That was identified in the paved road assessment that was presented to council. And this would be a debentured item where the work would take place in 2022, and the cost would be debentured over a number of years.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Can you be more specific with a number of years? Are you talking 5, 10?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, that would be brought forward by Alicia with options.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Through the chair to Andre, I don't have the other papers in front of me. Was that both sections or was that just one of the two? Because there was two different amounts, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Williams, this is it would be the western half of Horse Creek Road.
So then the other one would still be coming fairly quick behind that then?
Yes.
The other, okay.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Prestige?
Just on the debentures, West Mountain Road, I can't remember if that was a debenture or did we have money for that?
We, through the chair to Councillor Prestige, we haven't done any debentures in the last year. All work that was done within our contingency that was set up in the 2021 capital budget.
And your worship, if I can supplement that, the reason there was Councillor Prestige's memory was that we considered the debenture on East Mountain Road in the event that we had to fix it. And we were gonna monitor that, and we continue to monitor it, so.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Andre, the section on Horse Creek Road that we're considering putting an overlay on, how long is that section?
1 point something.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember. I had that number last week, but I can't recall.
Yeah, it was a couple
For some
kilometers.
reason, I'm thinking 3.8 kilometers, but
Yeah, it's
don't hold me to that.
Yeah, I can picture that paper, but I can't remember the number.
So just to follow, this number of 2.2 looks to me about the same as, I think it was 1.8 on the West Mountain Road overlay, and that, I think that length is about the same, about 3.5.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, the West Mountain Road came in, I believe that was 1.5 kilometers? Something like that.
That was only 1.5 kilometers. And the cost, I drove by that sign a million times, I'm sure it was 1.8 million.
1.1 million.
Okay, so yeah, then that's about, you're thinking about double, so that this cost is relatively similar.
On average, through Chair Councillor Dean, on average, you can bank on $1 million for every 1.6 kilometers for
$1
paving.
million a mile.
Okay. We've actually been running, I just realized it's 11:30 and we've been running without a break. Does anyone need a break or do we want to continue to lunch? Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back and then if lunch isn't here by then already, then we'll keep going on a few more items, so.
Sounds
So
good.
lunch is scheduled for around 11:30, but once it comes, we can.
Oh, okay, well, if it's scheduled for 11:30, then let's keep going.
Yeah.
If everyone can handle another 10 minutes or so. Jeremy?
Absolutely.
Okay. Not to put anyone on the spot, sorry, I'm probably the worst, so. Anyways, okay, let's keep going. Is that it?
My part's done.
Okay, Alicia?
Through the chair and members of council, just a couple points that I would add to the Horse Creek Road project so that you have this while you're determining whether or not debenture is the direction council would like to go. There's a number of requirements that we have to go through if we choose to debenture funds for it. There's public advertising. Any monies borrowed in excess of 5 years have specific regulations through the Municipal Government Act to follow. Just as reference, to take a 10-year loan through Alberta Capital Finance Authority, the cost in interest is about $346,000. And on a 15-year term, the cost for interest would be $585,000.
So about 2.2.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I have a question, Mr. President. So, with regards to debenture, and I'm assuming you mean we're financing the road essentially, right? Would the typical strategy be for municipalities to essentially finance or debenture that the length of time that would match the amount of time it would take typically for that road to degrade, so that we're essentially financing the roads as we go? Or what's the normal strategy around that type of thing?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, that is potentially one line of thought. Another is simply looking at the amount you're wanting to borrow and your cost of servicing that and how many years you're wanting to commit to for it. Do you want that period of time where you're not? Right now, we have a number of debentures that do not come due until 2030. There was a brief summary of that done in the initial orientation for you. So it's a separate conversation really, so that we can look at debt servicing and how it's going to impact. So although any loans or financing debenturing that comes out is for capital projects, all the servicing is done through the operating budget. So those interest and payment costs are dealt with on that through the operating. So
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clukin?
Yeah, through to Alicia. When we debenture these things, are the terms or the interest, are those terms solid, or do they float like ours do?
through the chair to Councillor Coken, the through Alberta Capital Finance Authority, it's fixed. Even if you run into some really great years and you have extra money, it's not going to reduce your servicing costs. You are, at the time you're pulling that loan with them, this is your cost for the next number of years, regardless if you pay it off early. Number of financial institutions in Alberta are, I guess, competing for municipal business, if you will, and so there is an opportunity for looking at other financing mechanisms where you could have maybe the floating interest rate or the lesser interest rate. Again, all decisions that council will be making at the time that we decide to move forward with this project.
I'm gonna ask a grand scheme question here. So the amount of supply chain problem that we've seen coming in the last little while, and that's really throughout North America, along with the inflation that we've seen as well. Where does that put us with some of these projects we have are absolute must-dos? But some of these other things that we have that might be nice to do, are we better to hang on to a piece of equipment or stave off a project until next year when everybody gets back on their feet and you've actually got, like, the supply chain is so disrupted now. I drove by one of the dealerships. I won't use the name because I don't want to give them a free plug, but they're empty. There's no equipment out there to buy. We're having trouble getting parts. We're having trouble getting supplies. The amount of delays that could be in some of these projects in the next little while or trying to complete. Do we have any sense of how that's going to affect municipalities? Has anyone looked into that?
Through the chair to all of council, myself, I haven't. So in my lens right now, I'm looking at getting the project list before council, getting the priorities set, and then even though it's on the capital budget, there's still communication back and forth with council. So in the event that for example, the pickup trucks were one of the items picked, and then if we found an inordinate delay and it was absolutely money we weren't going to be dispensing in 2022, then I'm certain Andre would be bringing back that documentation to council.
Okay. Counselor Dean?
I just want to make sure that we're not missing one of these items. I know, Andre, you said you were done, but did we discuss the Fort Sam salt shed re-roof? I know it's a small item, but I don't recall discussion on that.
Through the chair, Councillor Dean, no, I did not discuss it, but given that it's $15,000.
Okay.
Counselor Prestige?
Getting back to the supply, as you know, my background is in heavy truck sales. And I know lots of people that are still involved in it. To order a new truck today, you're probably not gonna get the truck on the ground till 2023, first quarter. And to get it rigged up, you're looking at another 2-3 months. So if we put this money in the budget for this year, it will not be spent in 2022.
Through the chair to Councillor Prestige, possibly not all of it, but I believe there would be deposits required at the time we're ordering. And there's a certain financial commitment that we would have to be made available for that. And again, this would be the first column of the 2023 capital project, if you will, to show the monies that are committed and potentially not dispersed by the end of the year.
Okay. Counselor Williams?
She answered it with the
Oh,
carry
you're
forward.
good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, what else do we have?
Through the chair to everyone, then I will ask the CAO, Mr. Frank, to assist me with the fire department items. It was his portfolio prior to.
Your worship, members of council, this is where Councillor Williams has to declare himself a peculiar interest
Okay.
because he is a member of the fire department and can't speak on all these items.
Okay, so for the process, just so that everybody does this, you have to declare a pecuniary interest, declare what, just not huge details, but what that pecuniary interest is, and then excuse yourself from the discussion of it and actually leave the room. So,
Sure. Yeah, I'll declare, I can't say the word peculiarly interest, because I'm a member of one of the fire departments that will be talked about.
okay, thank you.
Get out of the
We'll
year.
give you a shout.
Sure.
Yep, please. She has to leave them.
Great. We can just watch it on his phone.
Yeah.
But he can't stare us down and making decisions.
Your worship, members of council, if I may, I can deal with all these items together, with the exception of the Blue Ridge Fire Department, which is called the BRFD Wildland Truck. That $85,000 was allocated in 2021. Nothing was done with that money, so that money is sitting in reserves or sitting in the operational budget and will be part of accumulated surplus, so we're asking council to reconsider budgeting for that item again. And if, for those that are new to council, wildland fire truck is basically a rapid response. It's equipped and ready to go, that they jump in and take off. So all that equipment is sitting on that truck. It's a smaller unit that is, typically it's a 3/4 ton pickup, and ready to quickly roll out and respond to wildland fires. The item above is the White Court mini pump replacement. Presently under the expired agreement, we have a 1.5 unit pumper. So we own our pumper, which is the mini pumper that's called, plus 50% of another pumper that sits in the Whitecourt Fire Hall. And then we have a third unit, which is a tender water truck, if those that want to use that. But as a result, that was required for replacement in 2021. However, due to the on negotiations, that unit hasn't been requested to be replaced until now. And we are asking council to consideration to budget that. Fire trucks, from the time you order, there is a deposit, and you'll get it a year and a half later. The last one was 13 months. By the time you go through the process and ordering the chassis, the motor, and then you build the unit, typically, unless there's one sitting on the lot that meets your needs. Most fire trucks are custom made to the fire department based on the needs and services of the type of calls that they do. That takes me to Fort Assiniboine fire engine replacement. Fire engines are certified up to 20 years, and then their pumps, and only their pumps, have to be recertified every year. So most fire departments will move their frontline pump, their frontline fire truck, to a second backup unit, and then certify them for another 10 years past the date, based on the use of the fire pump, and have that pump certified beyond that. What we do is slightly unique in the sense that our two frontline fire departments are, sorry, I shouldn't say frontline, our two most active fire departments, Fort Assiniboine and Blue Ridge, based on volume. Units get placed every 10 years, and then their units are good for another 10 years because they go to Goose Lake and El Salmo respectively in regards to that. 10 years after, they then are moved out and sold off in regards to that. So we get it's a hybrid thing. We don't have second line or backup fire trucks. We have only the one units in each of them. And we don't have the capacity in our fire halls to consider having a second unit. And they're in close proximity that we do co-response now. We're starting to do more co-response. So we'll have Fort Assiniboine roll and Blue Ridge roll, and then Goose Lake and El Salmo will come as secondary calls. And again, depending on where the fire situation is.
Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Mr. Frank. So when it says under Anselmo Fire Department engine replacement not applicable, assumes 4 unit, so that means that Anselmo doesn't have that engine, doesn't have that truck, that it would come from Fort Assiniboine?
No, what it means is that El Salmo engine, there was a talk about replacing that that older unit first, and we moved the frontline ones to them after 10 years. So that's the reason why that should be in there.
So there'd be an engine coming from the Fort to Anselmo?
Yeah, once that gets replaced.
Gotcha.
The,
Councillor Kush?
just, so one of the other things that screws up our replacement, and I've asked, or will be asking, the manager of protective to provide a capital plan of the replacement flows on it, because in 2000, 16, 15, we replaced we were required to have a replacement unit at the Whitecourt Fire Department for a short period of time, and we ended up leasing one that the insurance paid for, and the manufacturer wanted to get rid of it, so he gave us a good deal, and we purchased it to Goose Lake. So Goose Lake actually has a relatively new unit that's going to not create problems. It's just we'll have to adjust our capital plan over the years to deal with it.
Okay. Councillor Kush?
Just one question about the mini pumper for Whitecourt with, is that capital that we're required to put into their haul, or is that something that we can leave that as they're like a third party, their assets are their own, and we worry about ours and just pay them as a service provider?
So what I can say through the arbitration process, we asked the arbitrator dealing with fire service, that the agreement remain the same, right? Other than base it on a percentage of call volume versus a percentage on population. So we would be responsible for the capital replacement of those units. The town has requested the arbitrator to say they want to supply the service, and we'll supply all the capital for that, and the Woodlands to pay a portion of the capital. So as a result of that, pending the outcome of the arbitration decision, we may end up not requiring this, or we may end up requiring it.
So it's the standard legal answer. Depends.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions on the fire? Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to Mr. Frank, so you've talked about fire departments, but haven't discussed the command truck.
The Woodlands command truck, is that Mr. Webb's unit?
I believe so, but I didn't have that conversation with him before his vacation.
We'll have clarification. So you retain the manager of protective services, and we would have a unit for him equipped and ready to roll so that he can either come on scene and provide extra resources. And when I say resources, equipment for that fire department and any of the members of that, or could use to switch those around for that, and we'll get clarification on that.
Okay, Councillor Dean?
It's through the chair to Mr. Frank, so that command vehicle, I know you don't have specifics, I understand that. That command truck would reside at the county shop and would be accessed when necessary?
Yeah, we've talked about allowing the individual to take it home, and I have to get the details on that too, what that would be regards to it, so that he can respond quicker versus coming out, switching units out, and starting it in the wintertime and stuff. So there are a couple models that I've seen in the wintertime, they're allowed to take them home because it's a quicker response. In the summertime, they come up here, so yeah. And again, location also determines, because we are at the far end, so sometimes you do have fires in the western portion of the county in Whitecourt, that it's easier to respond from down the hill, if I can use that term.
Okay. Councillor Preston?
Okay, so this Woodlands command truck is just a 3/4 ton truck with lights and siren and stuff on it. So
And a toolbox and equipped with, right, versus it'll have a what do they call them, toolboxes.
Okay, so we're getting 5 trucks, 3/4 ton trucks for $50,000 a piece, and this one's $85,000 because it has a toolbox and lights on it. So we're asking,
Through the chair to Councilor Prestidge, again, my apologies, I don't have the full details on this item. I actually thought I would have this morning to chat with Fund Manager of Protective Services to clarify a couple things. I didn't realize that his vacation had already started. So I do not have the answers on this one.
So you'll bring those details back to us when you get them?
I will. Andre seems to think that this is a 1 ton, so that could be part of the difference, but I also know there's a number of components that go on for rescue and that type of thing that does become quite costly, and we went through a lot of that with the patrol services vehicles here. The cost of the lights and everything to put on afterwards increased dramatically, so, but I will bring those details.
Okay. Anything further on the fire, or are we at a good spot to stop for lunch, because I think I saw it come in?
We are good unless there's other questions. So that is the capital, is again, no decisions are required today in regards to prioritization or additional. There may be, council may have some projects that you may want to have discussed on capital that we would have to go back and do some quick number crunching.
Okay. Anything from council? Okay, I don't see any, so with that, we'll take a break for lunch.
Soup and sandwich at the back.
Nikita, let us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. All right, with that, Mr. Frank, you want to continue?
Your worship, I'll hand it over to, let's just redo the operating budget.
So just to clarify, we're leaving capital where it says. Was anyone looking for a recap? Does anyone want to go through and have a discussion on the capital while it's fresh in everyone's mind? What was council's direction, or what is council's direction on moving forward with the capital? Is it all for the next meeting for discussion, or is there any further discussion needed today?
Go ahead, Councilor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to Alicia, just as we were discussing, if you guys could similarly kind of categorize for us needs, wants, and like to haves, I mean, that would help me with regards to how I would make my decision making for you guys. And not everything can be in need, obviously, but it would help with those further discussions.
You only get 4 needs. Just kidding.
Then we'll move into the operating budget, and I mentioned in the email to everyone that went out last week, this operating budget was in no means meant to be the final document. It was simply a starting point, an opportunity to give council a glance, if you will, at the entirety of the operating budget and how it's broke out into the numerous components. The next meeting, and I had alluded to December 8th, but it was brought to my attention that council had not made a motion for the next council meeting. So once the motion is made for when the next budget meeting is for council, then we will ensure that all the managers are present. Traditionally, we put up a PowerPoint presentation, and them, as the subject experts in their own department, will go through any changes in their budget from the previous operating year, any new items that is causing monies to be over, or perhaps where they've decreased their budget and reallocated it to another part of the organization. So a lot of the specific line-by-line questions will be answered at that time for council. From the document that you have reviewed, if there were some general questions that you wanted to email me, I just ask that you include all of council on those emails and I will respond to all. Perhaps it's a terminology that you'd like clarified for you. Just some general nuances if you're thinking it might be easier to take care of those matters outside of the meeting. I certainly will respond to any and all emails received. So we will go to this page and I'll ask Nikita if he can bring up the PowerPoint presentation.
Is it on?
Oh, I thought it was, maybe not.
Are you talking on iCompass?
Yes,
That's what you're talking, yep.
I will have it up in a second.
thank you. So this is just a, at a glance view, if you will, of how monies are allocated throughout the municipality. And the largest of the square represents the largeness of the expenses. Requisitions is included in that is when we talk about our taxation revenue at 27 million. We want to be sure that we're being very upfront that over 6 million of that is money that we are collecting on behalf of the province and the seniors organizations.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
I don't want to drill down deeper or derail your presentation, but I'm just a little confused. So the number for general that you have here is 27,248,203.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first 11 by 17 sheet of paper where general is listed, the total is 26,243,337 under budget 2022, which is the same total as budget 2021. And so you're showing on this graph here, or the sheet that has a graph, the number you're showing is 27,248, but then on that first sheet, it's 26,243,337.
Through the chair, Councillor Dean, and that is part of the problem with releasing the document before it's completely balanced and it's had an opportunity to go through everything. There is
Okay.
some out of balance areas,
Okay.
and that's why I'm hoping to go through the overview and not necessarily dive down into each individual line. We'll do that when managers are present, when CAO Frank and our managers have had a chance to sit down and review all of the pages.
Perfect.
You are very much getting a draft preliminary. We've inputted it into the software, we've printed it out of the software, but that final set of eyes and all of the long conversations that go in through administration on the budget process, not all of those have occurred yet.
Okay, but suffice to say that all of the spreadsheets are pretty darn close.
Yeah, you would like to flip, Council, to, I guess 43 of 43. So work at this backwards, so you will see there's, on that final page, on your budget 2022 column, you'll see minus 70,868. That is indicating that this budget is not balanced.
On 43 of 43?
Bottom line.
Bottom line,
Oh, okay.
very end of the
Gotcha.
page.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that is the indication that it is not balanced and then there is still work to do.
Okay, thank you.
So the colorful graph is just a starting point, gives you an idea of where the priorities have been for spending of the money. We do have an economic development department, so to speak, but it's a very small portion of the operating budget in comparison to utilities or infrastructure services, which essentially equates to roads. So the next page, the common group summarization, that's just to kind of give you a overview on how the budgeting works, digits. And we put in page numbers to help assist people finding their way throughout the booklet. And we've tried to give a brief overview of what is captured under those general headings. So under general government is the CAO officer, legislative or council services, so your budget is included in there. Corporate services, or alternatively as the finance. We have communication, safety, asset management, and some cost sharing in there. So a number of items that are included under that general document. So just as a guide, and please, this will become much clearer as we move through the budget process. But we found it helpful to kind of go through the coding with everyone. The next page is the Woodlands County Coding Guide. And if I could get Nikita to go to page 15 of the document, but everyone else, please stay on your page that we've just turned to, the coding guide. So in our world, if the first digit throughout anything is a 1, then I know we're talking about revenue. And if the first digit is a 2, I know we're talking about expenses. And then the second set of digits is going to refer to the department and or the function. And we have those all listed for you on that page. So everything for council under their legislative budget is function 11. So all of your, when you're doing your expense claims for us, your first digits are going to be 2-11. And then we'll carry on from there. And then the third digit is the type of expense. So there may be, in this example I've used, it's 10, that's a general. So think of it as an umbrella. So under the roads, there's a big umbrella and there's a lot of costs in there and they affect the entire department. But then there's other sub-umbrellas, so if they're doing ditching or patching, smaller sections under that umbrella, so we're gonna isolate those a little bit more. So on what Nikita has up on the screen on page 15, is just a page of the road budget. So you see 30, that's identifying that we are in the common services or the infrastructure services department. 32 is we're talking about roads. We're on page 15, Councilor Wilhelm as well. And then we'll see the next digits, so there's 31, so we're specifically talking about roads and vehicles. 51 is approach construction, 52 is meter control, 52 is culverts, and so on. So although there's a lot of pages, and as you're going through it, it's very methodical if you kind of follow the numbers, and if you always look at your first couple of digits, no matter what page you're on, you'll be able to easily identify by remembering that 10 is always general, 40s are utilities, 32 is your infrastructure or your common services. So that will help you go through the budget pages, I'm certain. And then we have locations for a number of different entities. So Whitecourt is always referred to as 01, and that will be in the final set of digits that you'll see as we're going through. Ford is always number 2, Blue Ridge is number 3, and Salmo 4, and East Lake 5. So there is very much a sequence for this, and I believe as we work through this over the next couple of meetings, just knowing that numbering system will help you kind of come through and follow along the budget with us.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Councilor Dean.
through the chair to Alicia. So, like on page 15, it's pretty clear, 30-32-33. But I don't, can you give me an example somewhere where the right quarter or the Ford is denoted in there?
I was looking for one prior to this meeting, and I believe that because I was trying to keep this summarized and very similar, so all of the pages were looking the same, I think I summarized all of those. You will see the 1s and 2s when we have the full presentation.
Okay, good, thanks.
So that's kind of my 50-cent tour on the coding. On the first long sheet of the budget page, The general revenue, which includes taxations, is shown there, and I have not adjusted for any of the revenue because the balance of the budget hasn't happened. So it's still simply just been mathematically carried forward. Nikita, I'm on page 1 of 43, so. And from there, I think that I would like to entertain any questions that individuals may have had from going through and reviewing this document, and that may help us move through this a little bit more so than just listening to me go on about the number of pages and the total subject.
Anyone specifics? Counselor Dean?
Well, my apologies, you know, guys, I always have a million questions. I think perhaps it would be better if I just took it offline and addressed a few of them with Alicia. I've probably got 6 or 8 questions. Do you want me to go through them now? What makes more sense for this meeting?
I don't see any problem with going through
Okay.
them now.
All right.
It's, we've got a high turnover on council, so, and I always learn something new going through things as well, so.
Okay, and before I get into it, through the chair to Mr. Frank, I'm okay, I don't need to declare a pecuniary interest unless we specifically talk about 2-500-511.
Is that office supply?
Yeah.
Yep.
You didn't know that? Okay, so my first question then is on page 3, in the highlighted, the gray highlighted, it's the summary of revenue. So budget 2022 shows 3.475 million. And budget 2021 was 2.9 million, so it's roughly a $500,000 increase. And I'm just wondering what accounted for that extra revenue.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, that is specifically tied to grant revenue,
Okay.
and those grants will be put in the appropriate departments as we're going through and balancing.
Okay. Do you want me to just keep going, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There's not a whole bunch more, and I don't know where they all are, but, so on page 7, kind of the same question. There's a $100,000 increase in total revenue. It was 182 last year, and it's 286 this year. On that grayed out revenue line.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Dean, that is, and this is one of the items that you'll see more clearly as we have the full presentation from the manager, but that is the anticipated lobbying revenue for this year.
I see it's miscellaneous revenue of 100,000, I'm sure that makes up most of it. Okay. So, next question is on 29. So we're showing, this is under economic development, and this isn't specifically a budget question, but it's trying to help quantify, or coming up with a way to quantify the effect of economic development. Most of these departments show revenue. This one shows 0 as revenue. And I think that's a bit of a misleading representation of what that department does, because if all a department ever did was accumulate expenses and never have revenue, then you might ask the question, why do we have that? I just ask, is there any way that we can try and quantify a number, you know, if the Economic Development Committee was able to stimulate the business environment and we had new businesses moving in, then that would mean new assessment. Could we come up with a number to help explain what that committee does? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, metrics is something we always struggle with at around economic development all the time is, you know, how do you show the performance of economic development? Because it's, and I think in the past we had a lot of things that were tagged under economic development that weren't necessarily economic development. So I'm gonna defer to our administration. I don't know if there is, but let's
So
see.
just for context, there's 230K in expenses and 0 revenue, and I just don't think those numbers line up with what reality is.
The difficulty that you have as administration to provide that number is to allocate, money coming in. I can budget, 200,000, for example, unless that actual translate into money coming through the door, whether it's taxation. Economic development typically is always proactive, progressive, going out there looking for that, and their rewards don't show up until 2, 3, 5, 10 years later sometimes. And to provide that and track that, sometimes from a budget perspective, I would say isn't the best tool. Where you have an economic development report, an annual report that would then show, here's the value of the department, and here's the programs or services that we offered, and here's the performance measures in which we were successful, right?
Yeah, okay, so thanks for that explanation. I guess the message that I want to send to council and administration and the public is that I feel this is a very worthwhile committee, and it just, I struggle when I see 0 revenue and $230,000 in expense. So, I understand the explanation and agree with it, Mr. Frank. And I'm just about done, you guys. Take them to the last page. It's a summary. So, the first question is, I see that, under expense, so I'm on page 43 of 43. So the fourth last line, so the expense line, we budgeted last year almost exactly the same as we're budgeting this year, 39,864 this year and 39,460 last year. To date, we've spent 21,530, and I'm just wondering where that $17 million, $18 million is. And then the second question is, can you explain reverse amortization?
To the chair, to Councillor Dean. So the answer to your second question first, so amortization is a non-cash item, but it was legislated a number of years ago that municipalities were required to begin showing amortization or how much their assets were depreciating every year into their budget so that it would be recognized, and the theory would be that you would be working towards either putting away or replacing your assets on the same scale that they're depreciating, so that there was always perpetual renewal of your resources. So you wouldn't end up, because we've all heard the newscasts of You know, they had so much money in the bank, but they had $200 million worth of infrastructure under the ground that they had no way of paying for. So having amortization put into the budget was a way to bring it to council's attention so that those plans, asset management, those steps could be taken throughout. So from the 39 that's shown in the budget, when we're saying reverse the amortization, we take it out of there. It's a non-cash item.
So that's what reverse means?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we're just in the process with our software provider of correcting some of the anomalies that we had in our line items before. There were things that were represented differently than, there's been some changes throughout the MGA and some requirements with the province. And the county hadn't always made some of those changes in the structure of the coding because it's always a cost to have the software provider do that. So we've taken steps in 2021 and we're still working on it with them.
So just to clarify that, every balance sheet I've ever seen always talks about amortization, and reverse amortization and amortization, same thing, it's just terminology?
It's just a way to take it out and be
Okay.
recognizing it as non-cash.
Okay.
So to answer your second question, Councillor Dean, so where the difference is, so on the 21 million spent to date, there's a number of items that still haven't been taken out. There's two significant capital projects that are just in the process of being paid for now, so those expenses aren't showing up within these numbers at the time we generated the reports. There's also, for sure, 1 quarter, possibly 2 quarters of the money to the province. We pay quarterly to them. I know the last one comes out on December 31st, so there would have been one at the end of September. But I honestly don't know if they've booked that entry. It's money that automatically comes out of our bank account. So, but for sure, 1 quarter of the school requests. We also wait until the end of the year to make our entries to the reserves, because we did budgeted entries to the reserves. We do that at the end of the year so that they're cleaner, and we have we're through the year-end process and the audit process, so we're not making an entry and then changing it 3 or 4 times as other things adjust throughout the books. We also have $3 million in bad debt allowance budgeted for, and we have not made any entries towards that bad debt allowance. Again, we don't want to be premature. We want to wait until after the end of the year. We want to make sure that we've calculated any tax agreements we entered into with people, and so we can forecast the payments yet to become and actually be very comfortable with the amount that we're bringing to council, saying this is what bad debt looks like for this year.
Thank you. That's it. I'm done.
Good. Everybody clear as mud on the rest of it? Okay, did you want to take us through an overview then?
Well, through the chair to all of council, I'd like to entertain any other questions, but I would like to, and I erred in not doing this before. So pages 1 through 43 takes your budget through department by department, function by function, everything that we do. Pages 41 to 43 at the back, they summarize everything by category. So every department has a contracted services line in their budget, but on these last 3 pages, it's totaled. So when you see, for example, contracted services and the total, that's for the entire organization through all the budget lines. So it's just an opportunity to take the previous 40 pages and all of the redundancies and similar budget lines and seeing a total of exactly what legal's coming up to, exactly what contracted services, how much for office supplies, utilities, and so forth.
Didn't hear that.
So with that, I'm able to go through any other questions people had, and
Councilor Push.
To the Chair to Alicia, just one quick question on administrative services on 3 of 43 there. we show budgeted revenue for 2021 at 2.9 million and actual only at 900,000 right now. I know you said there's some grants and stuff that are going to be coming. I'm just wondering if that's gonna make up the extra $2.2 million that's showing shortfall.
Through the chair to Councilor Kush, yes, we have reserved $2.1 million on MSI that we have not received yet. But we have sent the documentation in saying that we are spending it in 2021, so we'd like to receive it in 2021.
I'm just looking around for more questions, so. Go ahead, Councilor Dean.
Just wanted to clarify Councilor Cush's question. You were asking about the budget versus actual, so the 2.9 versus the 9 received?
Yeah, just with the $2 million difference there.
So at a high level, I'm gonna just, let's for giggles go, not giggles, but let's look at 41. And, because there's a few terminology things when you get to the public end of things that people are talking about. So residential property tax, you start at the very top there. Residential property tax is 4 million, right? So that's our expected revenue through residential property tax through the whole county in 2022. Non-residential property tax, so that's the commercial properties. So that's 10.86. Electric power and pipeline tax, can we call that linear? It's close.
Loosely, yes.
Is there M&E in there as well, machinery and equipment?
Through the chair of council, M&E would be considered in your non-residential.
Okay,
Questions?
go ahead.
Through the chair to Alicia.
So, yeah, our plan is to increase taxes by 3%, property tax by 3%, so that's not attributed in this budget, because I see they're the exact same for this year and next year. Is that something that you'll update when we get the financials, or we have to make that decision still?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm. That is one of the, it's premature for me to put it in until I haven't given all the managers the opportunity to put in their wants and needs and desires, and then we come to council and let you know that based on this budget, this is what the tax increase is going to be. The budget that we will present to you at the next meeting will have a 3% increase factored in on this, and the offsetting entry, if it's not needed for operational, will be the amount going to reserves. And we do it that way because that is the plan that council has directed us so far to follow, and it would be coming from council for us to deviate from that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Just to
Frank?
supplement that, this is the anomaly year because of the election. Typically, you would have pre-planning meetings, so before we even prepare the budget, we're sitting down and asking council what your needs are, what projects do you want us to consider, what are the parameters for us to put together the budget. And again, and this is an anomaly, and next year in September, early October, we'll begin that process. And one of the other things is public participation, right? Is council want to go out there? And this is some of the stuff that in your strategic planning thoughts that you could bring up where you want to go with communication to your public.
Councilor Dean?
Through the chair to Alicia, while we're on page 41 or 43, I had a couple more questions that I didn't bring out in that battery of questions. The first one is relating to oil well drilling licenses. The budget for 2021 was 27,650, and we collected about 2,000. Is there an expectation that there's more licensing fees to come in the last month or so?
through the chair to Councillor Dean, that is most definitely a line that I need to circle back with to see what the forecasted activity is going to be on it.
Okay, because I noticed that next year's is less, is 23.7 versus 27.6. So my first question was gonna be, why did it go down? The forecast, everything I'm hearing is that the industry is actually wrapping up a little bit, so hopefully that's true. And then,
Councilor Dean, sorry to interrupt. However, there is a hiatus on drilling well tax.
Right.
So we need to investigate that further. So that number should actually even go down even more.
from 2000?
Yeah. It's been eliminated for the time being.
Yeah, for a
They're not
3-year,
gonna
which
claw the
they're,
2,000 back, are they? I mean, we received it.
could
Okay.
be something else though.
Okay. The other question was that interest income is listed as a line item, and the budget for 2021 was 175,000. To date, we've collected just not quite 55. Two questions. What are we collecting interest on? I'm assuming it's GICs or whatnot, but and why have we only collected 55 out of the forecasted 175?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, the interest, first answer your question, interest is when the bulk of or the tax payments or the majority of them are collected, we put as much of that money as we can into interest-bearing accounts. And then the interest is calculated on that and it's reflected as revenue. And the 54,000 will be changed come year end. I believe the bank, for the reconciliations, I'm going to say she's probably only reconciled to the end of August at the time I ran this. So we have some additional months to go through. Plus, if any of the monies was some of the smaller accounts that have the money, she may not make those entries on a monthly basis. She'll go through and do those on a 6-month.
Okay. Okay, good, thanks.
Any further? Okay. Alicia, go ahead.
Through the chair and all the council, if there's no other questions, and Mr. Frank is in agreement of this, I believe that any overview that I could give today would be not as valuable as the one that you will get at the next meeting from the department managers. So it would be, I would be fine with if I deal with questions and everyone has a comfort that they now have a glimpse of the budget and what we're working with. We'd like the opportunity to bring back the final balanced budget to council and make have the department managers the opportunity to present to council.
I've got one or two questions here yet, but go ahead, Councilor Dean.
Then I think I was just gonna go ahead and move the recommended action, but we'll wait for the questions.
No, the one that I wanted to ask was specifically, and I know this is something that I had a hard time wrapping my head around, and because we had, in the past, we had done the 3% reduction on tax on the municipal portion of people's tax assessment. So I wonder if you, since we're on a YouTube channel and everything, that people can look at this, if they are interested, can you explain the provincial education, like the provincial component of this tax collection of the revenue portion that we don't necessarily, it ends up being kind of like a GST on a bill that we collect it, but we don't have any control over it. We don't have any say in what it is, and we certainly don't allow for it. We're just tax collectors at that point, so.
Chair, certainly I can do that for you. I'll draw your attention to page 43. You will see about half of your page, you'll see a line that says requisitions. And senior foundation requisition. One is 5.7 million and one is 512,000. So those two amounts are sitting on page 43, which is in the expense division. So you immediately then can go to page 41, and when you see your subtotal there of property taxes of 26,243,000, you have to immediately subtract that requisition total from that, because we are only collecting those monies on behalf of the province. So that immediately puts our revenue for taxation that the municipality would use for their purposes to run the municipality at approximately 20 million in this example. So you always have to remember that when we're talking tax collected and requisitions, we're talking about whole numbers, and that the money that we send to Alberta Education and the separate school division and all the senior foundations are as an expense as equal as paying our utility bill. It comes out of our revenue.
So when you get that down to the nitty gritty, we're basically dealing on so operating capital, all of our equipment, 850 kilometers of roads, 4 fire departments, all the rest of it, that's all, how many? Andre's here, 120, how many bridges?
105.
105 bridges. That's all coming out of $19-20 million net budget.
Correct.
Okay. Where is our, as an update, or you said we're entering year 3 of a 5-year economic recovery plan. Part of that economic recovery plan was a $10 million operating reserve, correct?
Through the chair.
And if you don't have the number, don't let me put you on the spot for it. I'm just wondering where we're at with that roughly.
There was an allocation made within the financial recovery plan and that was the offset for the 3% tax increase, was to ensure that we were always able to facilitate and put money into the reserves. Those numbers will be presented to you through the audited financial statements. We'll have some preliminary more towards the end of the year, but they will come as a focal point with the audited financial statements when the auditors are actually here now doing some preliminary work, so.
Okay.
But that is always our goal, is to rebuild the reserves.
Councillor Dean?
And, thanks, Mr. Chair, through to Alicia. If memory serves me, during the orientation, our auditors, in reference to the money that was allocated to reserves, as you know, there was a line within the financial statements showing money allocated to reserves. His comment, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering correctly, was that while we were allocating money to reserve, we weren't bringing in enough revenue to meet our expenses. You guys remember that?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, he did in fact, the county is operating at a net deficit position, meaning our liabilities, if we look at all of our long-term debt and our accounts payables and our accrued liabilities, are exceeding our assets and have been at the end of the year. But one of the first council meetings for this council, the RFP came towards you and we physically moved some monies because we received our reduction on our school tax credit for a couple quarters because we were successful in our application. So the PERC program was put into place because what was happening is the companies who were not paying their taxes to municipalities, we still had to send the portion that the province owed on those tax notices, even though we didn't collect those monies. So the province put the provincial education requisition credit program into effect so that we could then apply back and get that money back from the province. So we did receive that money back from the province through a credit in our future. So we have physically taken and put that money away in an account as rebuilding of reserves. So there are the steps being made. A lot of what the auditor was referring to was in the past, prior to what has been going on now.
Right, that statement would have been for 2020.
Yeah, in 2020, we had a difficult time putting any in because we were really still catching up. We hadn't received a lot of news on any tax agreements with some, so this year I anticipate a significantly different report from them.
For 2021, you're talking about, yeah. Okay.
Well, and that's the difficulty around the provincial education tax. So I'm just gonna use rough numbers, it's about around the 6 million mark for the provincial education. So if we don't collect, let's say $2 million, we've still gotta pay the 6. So we're short 2 in collecting, plus we have to pay out the extra 2, so we end up down on cash flow by 4 until we can write off the 2 and then collect it back. And that process is what, a year and a half on the books behind, 2?
Yeah, about that.
So this is part of the cleanup that and I know this is a mess to think about and figure out, and I'm trying to summarize some of these things because these are the questions that I had, and they were difficult to answer in my own head as we're going through some of them. So hopefully I'm not over explaining here for anyone. But Councillor Dean?
Yeah, just fundamentally, the question I was asking was what the auditor said was that our revenues didn't meet our liabilities, and yet we were still putting money into reserve. But you're saying that money came in the form of that grant coming back for the uncollected taxes and the education payments in province.
Through the Charter Council, Dean, yes. So the entries were being made, and positives for the county are not always in the form of cash. We have assets and we have what our value is as a county. So the entries were correct and they were being done in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, but there wasn't always that physical cash to move over into those accounts because our expenses were exceeding our revenues.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Frank?
No, your next steps is, your worship, members of council, if council is accepted to accept this presentation as information, the next step would then be to pick a next budget meeting, and we'll schedule the appropriate staff to go over the presentations in more detail on what has changed over from 2021 to 2022.
Okay, and is it is it administration's intent to try and get this passed so that we don't have to do an interim, or what?
Your worship, members of council, for the new members of council, the Municipal Government Act says that prior to December 31st of each year, the council must adopt a budget for the preceding year. The act is silent on what does that mean. However, I believe in a philosophy that staff need to operate the budget, so we try to provide you with the information so that we can start ordering equipment or going through the tender process so that there's no delay in the operational perspective. However, there are individuals, municipalities that will give staff 50% of the previous year's budget to operate until you finalize in May or June. Again, the philosophy that I've always taken is you adjust the budget in May or June just before you set your tax rate, so that if there are any minor adjustments, and they should only be minor adjustments, then then staff can continue to operate and show that there is no interruption in services that are applied. So we are anticipating and hopefully, and that's a question for council, at the next council meeting is to whether we're having our regularly scheduled meeting for December 22nd. Yeah, December 22nd. Which is fine, because we're open till the 23rd, right? 4:30 on the 23rd.
Okay.
And we're flexible on any number of budget meetings that you want to go over the details.
Okay. So I guess we'll start with a follow-up special meeting schedule. Well, first of all, we'll adopt the preliminary 2022 budget. Who wants to make that motion?
I move that council accepts the 2022 preliminary budget presentation as information.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dean. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Okay, so let's break out some calendars here.
If I can ask a question.
Go ahead.
How much, through the chair to Alicia, how much time
Does the department's head need to prepare fully for us to have the next meeting?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, people are already working on it, but it would be nice to for sure have this week,
For sure have the which?
this week, to work
This
on
week?
things, yeah.
Oh, yes, okay.
I'm off the 7th till the 13th, if that helps anybody.
Mayor Burrows, you're gone on the 8th.
Yes, I'll be back on the 9th.
I'm good either the 7th or the 9th.
Okay, either of those dates work for me.
Those days work for me.
Work for me too.
9th doesn't work for me, sorry guys.
The 7th?
7th, I could probably swing it.
9:30.
7th, I'm gone.
6th, I'm gone.
What about Friday the 10th?
Good for the 10th.
Works for me.
I think I can make that work.
Good man.
We're flexible, your worship. We
You
can-
love having long meetings on Friday?
Your worship, we're here to serve the municipality.
Okay. So December the 10th works for everyone? Well, that was easy, okay. So I'll accept a motion to make that a special budget discussion date. Councillor Wilhelm?
Motion to make Friday, December 10th at 9:30 a.m. a special meeting to discuss budget
Budget discussion?
discussions.
Okay. All right, any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay,
You want to get that question, I can get you an answer. Do you want to do it?
It doesn't matter.
is there a question?
Your worship, just a question came up in regards to when can a councillor have a discussion on the pecuniary interest and when can they, in detail versus overarching, right? And I wonder if it would be beneficial for the new councillors as well to get a legal opinion so that they understand how pecuniary interest works in regards to relationship on items that council is discussing particularly, and in this case, in particular, the 2022 budget, but going forth, any other items that might be there.
So are you saying legal opinion for each counselor, all council, or how, just to clarify
In
before?
general, there are two counselors that we know that have pecuniary interest. How does that in the discussion, making them comfortable to have that discussion? Because I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the two counselors, they don't want to be perceived as doing the wrong thing, right? So they want to know what parameters can they stay within, you know, so that they don't go outside those parameters.
Well, and it's important all of council knows that, so
Yeah.
Councillor Dean?
Good point.
Through the chair to Mr. Frank, given the fact that every legal opinion is open-ended, it's hard to define, but one of the things residents told me while I was campaigning is, why do we need a legal opinion or two in every meeting? Is there, like, is this so specific that there's nothing written down that would just reference it? Does it have to be defined by a lawyer?
Well, again, it's an interpretation in regards to how I interpret it. Again, the counselor that has the peculiar has the responsibility to declare. If they don't declare, administration is not at fault in advising, because again, you have to make the decision as the counselor whether you're in a peculiar interest. However, because the parameters and I guess the rules around that are specific to the budget, is when do you have a peculiar interest and when don't you, right? Is a general term, but when it comes to specific based on that, I can tell you how I would handle it. However, are you comfortable taking that advice when it's your position on the line? So it's entirely up to council. I'm not seeking a legal opinion unless council asks.
Right.
I typically don't seek legal opinions unless it's administratively required.
No, and I think that's been a kind of a discussion around council, is to make sure that we're not allowing our legal staff to overbill. So, Councillor Prestige.
Last Monday and Tuesday, we went through Uni 101 course, and it was very in-depth on community interests. So the counselors that didn't receive the course should get the course as soon as possible, because it explains it fairly well,
Yeah.
which would mean we wouldn't have to do a legal. So as soon as you guys can get signed up to it, the better off you'll be.
And I guess,
Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
in reference to that, I've taken those courses in the past, so I feel comfortable doing the same thing this year that I've done in the past. I totally understand, Devin, this is new to you, and that if you want to get an opinion, that's not a bad thing, but it's, do you have that uni course? Did you take that?
No, not yet. I have to get that. I'm, God, if I can,
Go ahead.
I'm okay to not get it. I was just maybe seeking a little clarification for if it was a overview of the whole budget or if it was line itemized, was where I was. Otherwise, every time we talk about capital expenditure, if somebody brings up one thing that says anything to do with fire, I have to leave the room. So I just wanted to know if that actually has to happen, or if we're drilling into the budget line itemized. That was what the difference is. Otherwise, I'm gonna be in and out like a yo-yo.
Councillor Wilhelm?
My understanding from the lawyers at that course that we did last week was that you are allowed to be in here for the discussions, right? It's not those discussions that we're having in regard to the budget with regards to the fire, sorry, I say regards a lot, but it's not directly impacting your wage. It's not directly impacting financial interest towards you. It's impacting a portion of the municipal government that you are employed by. So the lawyers, as far as I understood, were saying that you can be part of that discussion making, or that discussion, just as long as we're not making direct financial decisions that
Yeah.
affect you directly, right? That's how I understood it.
That's a really good example of why I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to get one, because there's so much interpretation right now. I'm new to this. I don't want to put myself in a weird spot. There's 3 people or 4 people in this room that have interpreted it differently so far. So I think the only way to accurately do that, because I don't want to get myself in trouble and I don't want to be just a disruption the whole time we talk about budgeting. So I think it would be a good idea. It's not like it's my primary employment. It's very cut and dry. It's quite a complex situation, obviously, because the legal opinions I've gotten say you can until it's directly affecting you. And talking about a fire truck for Blue Ridge, for example, does that affect me at all? I don't think it does, but if I could have your guys' support, I think it might be not a bad idea. If we did it once now, going forward, then it's done. But
Just to follow up, like when we were in that course, it was almost specifically talking about something like a fire department, because that's why I noted it, because I figured it was something to do with you. When we're talking budgeting, we're not talking allocating budgets for your salary specifically. It's for the entire budget for that fire department or whatever, right? And that he said if we're not specifically talking about one person, then it's not a direct pecuniary interest towards you. That's like that was the lawyer, straight from the lawyer.
Councillor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. What I'm sensing is that there's a certain level of discomfort, and I think to remove that would be a good idea to get.
yeah, and if I can one more time, sorry. I also heard the same thing as you and us. Campaigning is everything was going to legal, go to legal, and I'm not for that either. It's just this is going to come up a lot more times than just today and the next while. So just to get rid of that,
Well, yeah, to be clear, the advice that I understood from legal was that the legal opinion that'll be given is to the administration, correct? On this particular thing, so, because you've got 4 new counselors and this little discussion and these guidelines will follow us for the next 4 years, so I don't think it's something that we're frivolously dealing with or anything. We're trying to get a good comfort level and make sure that the residents are well represented by their members, so I don't see a problem in this at all. Is there any other discussion on it? So, Mr. Frank, would it be fair if each counselor wrote down anywhere they're uncomfortable with, and we get that guidance from legal, or how would that go? Without getting too crazy on this.
Yeah, Your Worship, no, I mean, if there's other areas that you believe that you may have a pecuniary interest that I'm not aware of, right? And we're talking pecuniary interest, right? Because it will come up from time to time that you will never, any of the counselors won't think of, right? And the intention always, the act is if you knowingly know that you have a peculiar interest, right, then you have to declare. But if you inadvertently discover that you have a pecuniary interest, right, whether it's after the fact or during, and you don't believe that you are in peculiar interest, I don't think any judge, and this is my opinion only, any judge would fault you for that, right, in regards to that. However, but there may be, and the only the reason Councillor Williams brought the issue up is he wants to know what can he have a discussion during the budget process to see if he can freely talk or has to remove himself, right? And that way, if we get that cleared up, then for the next 3 years while he's doing budgets, we know where those guidelines are.
Okay, So does council want to move to seek legal opinion on the? Counselor Kush?
I'll make the motion to seek legal opinion or clarification on the pecuniary interests.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right. You already made the motion for the date, correct? Okay.
I don't think we did make a motion. Oh, no, Sir Jeremy.
I think we did.
Yeah.
That's why I said, it was so easy, I forgot it.
Shannon's already got it in the calendar.
Already been updated.
It's already there. It's done.
All right, so that'll be it then. That brings us to item 4 then, which is legal matters under Fort 27. So maybe what we'll do is get a motion to move into a closed session, and then once the Williams, did you have a question?
Nope, just I was gonna make that.
Oh, you were gonna make a motion? Okay. What I was gonna say is we'll move into closed session and then we can take a quick break and then we'll continue on with that discussion, come back out, and we'll be into an adjournment, so. Okay. Counselor Williams, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that council goes into closed session due to FOIP 27.
Yeah, you just read the title there, Legal Matters Fort 27.
Legal matters, FOIP 27.
Perfect. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried, we're in closed session, we'll wait for.
I think we're done, right?
According to the agenda.
Do you want to stay here all night?
I know it's not snowing, but I don't want to be here till 1 o'clock tomorrow.
I'd rather drive home in the daylight.
We're good? Okay. So with that, we're out of our closed session, and we have one motion coming forward. Counselor Kuchen?
I will move to accept the discussion on legal matters for information.
Thank you. Any discussion on that matter? Motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Somebody want to move the adjournment? Counselor Kush?
I got a motion to adjourn.
No discussion on a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn is accepted. All in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.